Okay, so hello, my name is Michael. I'm your humble dungeon master, and I just wanted to talk about my thought process for creating game sessions for Dungeons and Dragons, or applicable to any really any TTRPG for that matter, tabletop role-playing game. So, um, first things first, the type of adventures I tend to run are location focused. So that means that they're about being in the place and navigating its obstacles. Sometimes there are creatures or people within it, or people without it that gives you information on it. But it's very focused on being in the place and doing the thing, whatever the thing may be. Okay, so because it's location focused, the first thing I do is that I get out my document and start sketching up a place like a tomb or a dungeon. Hey, Dungeons and Dragons. And start putting out chambers and what should be where. Usually I do this now in Clip Studio Paint, which is what you see here. But this my old method used to be that I'd just get out a sheet of 8.5 by 11 printer paper and just go to town with a ballpoint pen illustrating out my dungeon. So actually, that's what I have set up here. I went ahead and, let's see here, canvas size. I went ahead and made an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper for you here in Clip Studio Paint. So yeah, just start going to town, right? So uh, the first thing I do is imagine, well, what are you here for? Are you here to collect something, or are you here to go somewhere or meet someone, right? And let's say for this one, it's about meeting a kind of a hermit guide, someone that might know more about the location you ultimately want to go to. So he resides in a tomb that goes deep into the earth underneath a mountain. So, you could have a variety of options. Let's say that your characters first start in a well. That's where you want the characters to go. So I just kind of draw up an area of where I want the start area to be, and I label it for myself start. And the idea is that start thinking about what this well is. Is it an excavation site, or is it was it made to be an entrance, like a kind of a test from whatever ancient civilization put it together? All right, so in this case, let's go ahead and say it was an excavation. Like this is a temple that has been buried over eons of sand and dust. And this was an excavation from an archaeological dig. And for whatever reason, they stopped. Maybe they ran away because this place is haunted. I mean, after all, this is Dungeons and Dragons. I mean, anything supernatural goes, honestly. So they come down this excavated well of sorts, a hole, and then they might have a number of options, right? Because the archaeologists might not have, might have burrowed into somewhere in the middle of this city, but or temple, but not necessarily its original intended start. So that's where I start thinking of, and from this point on, it's kind of like dream logic, right? Because then I just start making the flow of where I want characters to go. So, I have this little indicator for doors, right? This little double hatch mark. All right, so this area might go towards a hallway. Well, if this is a hallway, and this is the excavation site, perhaps there was also more hallway that extended past it, like the archaeologists dug into a hallway before they started meandering about, which means this was originally an intersection between a pair of chambers. So you could go ahead and have chamber here, chamber there, and really this is all the thought process, right? This is it. There is nothing deeper beyond this point. Absolutely nothing. Don't overcomplicate this at all. Just don't, right? So, you think, okay, well, this is giving the players options, right? The couple of chambers here, they have a hallway. And, you might want to think, well, I don't want these to just necessarily be open rooms, but I don't necessarily want them to be occupied. So what could I do instead? Well, fun things to do are secrets and traps. Like, let's say in this southern door, we have a trap. Now, this is a trap that would have been encountered immediately by the excavation team. So it wouldn't make sense that this trap is still waiting for somebody, right? If there were ancient defense systems, they would have been triggered long ago. So maybe this was a trap that was left behind by the last excavation team trying to force people to leave rather than face whatever dangers lurk further beneath. And in the other chamber, to help, to help along the curiosity, to at least encourage the players to risk, right? Because you don't want to scare them away from not risking, else they don't adventure and then nothing happens. So what if you were to add like a secret passageway? Maybe this wasn't entirely meant to be secret, like because this is some sort of temple, like let's go ahead and say that it was above ground, but it became beneath ground over the time periods, right? But perhaps there was the temple had some sort of water flow system to help in case there was a flood, that it would drain water away from the temple no matter where the water was ending up in, right? So perhaps this is like some sort of ancient waterway, not really intended to be a passage per se, but it could be used as one. And then when you present the secret to the players, they have to crawl on all fours to go forward. And then you present them with an option, right? They suddenly have a fork in the road as they're on their hands and knees trying to navigate what was meant for water but is now a dusty, dark relic. And it might lead to other chambers, right? And then you as the GM could say that there is a drainage point, but you could say that that's beyond the point of interest. I mean, you could say that if you follow that out, you'll go out for about 2 miles and you'll come to an old dried up riverbed where there used to be water, but there is none now, right? But you could also say that this does lead to other chambers. And all this is about is just creating options for your players to go out and explore. And as you could see, this initial map idea is extremely rough. I mean, it's very messy, and all we're doing so far is just filling out the physical place, right? Okay, so this area was a hallway. We're going to extend it because, there's a room here. So we're going to extend it out, and then we're going to erase some of these, oopsies, some of these older marks to indicate that it's a long hallway. And then there might have been like an entry point, some sort of ceremonial space. And the original entrance, right? And this leads to just earth and rock and dust. They try to open the door and that's all they find because they're in an underground temple. And they could find other ways that branch off from various places, right? So they could come back to this room and there's other chambers along the way. You just start filling out where things go. And, from this point on, I'm kind of like on autopilot as I'm just designing the place. And then I might go back later to think of what practically some of these rooms were, because, you can't just have empty rooms everywhere. They have to actually mean something and go somewhere. At the end of the hall, there might be a larger chamber of some kind, like this is the entryway, this is where the actual business is done, so the higher echelon priests and whatnot would be along here. So you could have your headmaster with a massive office in the back. You can have some of his staff were working in this back area as well. And yeah, this is basically just the philosophy, right? You could tell that on this 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper that all I've done is kind of made this off-center kind of map. And, this is actually good enough to start running an adventure out of. Because from this point on, you're thinking, well, okay, what occupies this area? I mean, this is an underground, forgotten temple, and whoever was excavating this site was chased out and was so terrified that they tried to terrify other people out from even discovering what lies beneath, right? So you could have the undead here. You could also, ghosts, skeletons, rites, anything that fits that theme, and just go to town with it, right? And if your concern is that, well, that might not be challenging with a cleric, a wandering holy man that can turn the undead, remember the turns don't destroy undead typically. It usually chases them away. So after a minute of being chased, they might go back to their patrols, maneuvering through rooms, that sort of thing. And if you really wanted to, you could have the undead keep coming back, right? I mean, the excavators had to be at least as capable, right? Like a philosophy of mine that I enjoy from, say, Star Trek is that to build up tension, Star Trek would have a vessel just like the Enterprise in its intro, and it meets a terrible fate, so you know that whatever happened to that vessel could happen to the Enterprise, right? So there was a reason that these excavators were chased out, and it's up to the new party of players to figure out how to make it stop. So perhaps these undead are coming back because some place has been desecrated, right? And they have to reconsecrate it in order to bring the undead back to a calm. So you might think, well, where might that be hidden, right? You might come up with the objective of maybe the headmaster's office. Come up with a history for what happened to the headmaster. Was he turned to a kind of dark side? Was he corrupted in some way, or was he a charlatan from the start? And what might be done in order to undo the damage that might have been done to or done with the headmaster? And then once that is solved, only then do the rest of the undead go back to peace, but also one of them might reveal a secret passageway deeper into the mountain where they can meet their shaman, the person that they came here to look for. And there you go. That's it. I mean, from this point on, I'm just selecting out monsters that might meet the challenge of the players. I might be thinking about what clues they might be handing out to the players, like do some of them speak? Are they speaking in single tones? Or are they on a particular subject? That sort of thing. And encourage exploration. Like perhaps the headmaster's room is locked. Well, how do they unlock it? I mean, like the rogue tries, and it's a lock system that's not vulnerable to the typical lock picks. This is part magic, part mechanical. There might be components to this lock spread out throughout the rest of the dungeon. Encourage people to go looking, because that encourages people to explore and get into the feeling and the mood of the place. All right, I think that's going to be enough for right now. I mean, this is basically it. This is all I do. I just come up with a visual representation of where I want the players to go, and then I just kind of dream logic the rest of it in. I don't stress too much about extreme details. All right, I hope this was helpful. I know this one went on a little bit long, and I am setting this to public on YouTube, and I apologize to the randos that might find this. Don't subscribe, don't like, don't comment. I mean, this is not meant for big time. All right. Thank you for your time, and I hope my players found this useful in their efforts to become GMs themselves.